Thanks for tuning in. This is the American World Trade Chamber of Commerce. I have with me Mike Wilson from Go Exporting. Today we're going to be talking about what the future of trade between the United Kingdom and the United States might look like. So, as some of you may know, the United States has entered into discussions with the United Kingdom around a prospective free trade agreement. Those discussions have been stalled for a couple of years now. There seems to be a lot of will and want within the United States export community to look at a potential free trade agreement, but it has stalled. In the United States as well, we haven't entered into a free trade agreement with a new country since we set up the South Korea Free Trade Agreement in 2007. So we're looking at a pretty long period of time without a new country and a new free trade agreement. On a federal level, it does seem like discussions and potential may be stalled, but we do have individual states that are moving ahead with memorandums of understanding with the United Kingdom. And so, Mike, I'll pass it over to you if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to talk about this, Alex. It's much appreciated. It's quite an exciting area for export, I think, between the two countries. Since Brexit, the UK has been looking for trade agreements to replace the EU agreements that were in place before, and also to show the government's very keen, the government, to show that Brexit has been a success, or at least it was a positive thing. And one of the key points that the Brexiteers made during the discussions about Brexit was that we would be free to make our own trade agreements, basically. And the US was frequently cited as the apple of our eye, if you like, that we wanted to make an agreement. And there's obvious reasons for that: the closeness between the countries, and the US is the UK's largest trading partner, and we're the fifth export destination for US companies as well. So it's obviously an important relationship from that point of view. But when it became clear that this was going to always take some time, as you mentioned, it takes a long time to enter into a full trade agreement. They can be very complicated, very detailed documents, and they can take several years. We only managed to get the UK-EU trade agreement done by the skin of our teeth, and before Brexit happened. So, but now we have this twin track approach, we're calling it. So we've been looking at this. The UK government's been looking at discussing or entering into agreements with the states, individual states. Now, obviously, individual states can't make an agreement that changes anything to do with US customs, but they can do things within the states to make business easier, for example, and closer ties with different countries. Hence the memorandums of understanding rather than trade agreements. So far there are 7 agreements that have been put in place with different states, and those are Indiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Utah, Washington, and just last week Florida as well. So that's quite a mix of states there, and they actually cover around $4 trillion worth of GDP, which is close to the size of Germany in terms of GDP. So,
And interestingly as well, they actually cover a pretty wide scope of the American political spectrum. So there doesn't seem to be a slant one way or the other, right? We have a lot of very deeply conservative, a lot of swing states, and a lot of very deeply Democrat states in those areas as well. So it's interesting and potentially positive to see, this as a nonpartisan approach in the United States.
yeah, yes, I think I think it's obviously driven by the industries and the links that there could possibly be, and the benefits for both parties, to enter into agreements there. I think, and that's what's been driving it. So it is quite a broad spread, as you say, and the whole thrust of the agreement seems to be to ease trade barriers as far as possible, to increase collaboration with industry and also with academia, and to bring investors together as well. So there's investment in going both ways. Trade missions. There's been
Mm-hmm.
a number of trade missions already. North Carolina, I think there's been a couple that have come to the UK, and there's one the UK has been to to visit Boeing as part of one of the trade missions as well. 35 companies came over there, specially selected. So I think it's highly targeted, and it's designed, say, to reduce red tape, but to bring the closer collaboration between the states and the UK companies and government as well, of course. With a whole background to it, or a whole underlying theme is reducing carbon emissions, the green agenda, and that seems to be a key point.
I did see it as like a common theme. So I haven't read Florida's declaration yet, but I have read the MOUs for the other, and it seems like green energy is a really big focus
Yeah.
for all of those items, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of pans out as well, because obviously there's communication and collaboration on the actual knowledge piece. So I think that's going to be a really big component. Um, but as well, the US is hoping to ramp up some of their green energy production here in the US as well. Um, I've seen as well automotive was a common theme, as well as life sciences. So, and life sciences, it expands things like healthcare. I don't know if it would include personnel in each of these scenarios, but it does seem to focus on healthcare and automotive as major sectors. So is that kind of what you're seeing in terms of potential demand for products being brought into the UK, or what's kind of motivating that as a focus for these declarations?
Yes, I think if we look at automotive to start with, it is one of the major sectors in the UK economy. It accounts for around 67 billion worth of turnover, and three billion of pounds this is in R&D, and employs over three-quarters of a million people. So it's a key sector. More if you include the sort of indirect employment to that sector as well. So I think it is, and it's 10% of total UK exports. So it's clearly an important sector for the UK economy, as are life sciences and the health sector. So I think it's understandable that would be a drive, I think, from the UK side anyway, to try and promote that. And obviously the US is a huge market as well, with a lot of I think there's a lot of technology that we can share as well, which is another driver there. I think also for the drive towards electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Diesel vehicles here are bound, from the sale of new diesel vehicles within the next 5 or 6 years. So there's going to be a big drive towards electric vehicles, and battery technology is a key area. And as of yet, we don't have a battery manufacturing plant in the UK.
Hmm.
So it was going to be one, but that was shelved. It looks like it might be resurrected. So having links with manufacturers with that ability, that capability, I think is very important for the future of the automotive industry in the UK as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for US automotive linked companies to look at the UK market.
Okay, fantastic. Um, I think that makes a lot of sense. And for life sciences, I think that one may be self-explanatory as well, right? US and UK, I think, are both pretty heavily invested into that space, and so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for collaboration.
Yes, I
Um,
mean, we've got some huge life science companies here and
mhm,
pharmaceutical companies, so
mhm,
it's a big sector definitely. But I think the overall there's quite a lot of industries covered by these MOUs, in
mhm,
different states, and the aerospace is obviously one. The Florida one, the big driver there was the space industry, which is obviously huge in Florida,
yeah.
but in the UK it's a big industry as well. It's surprisingly big here in terms of the investment, and it's worth about 17.5 billion pounds a year turnover to the UK economy. So it's definitely a driving force there. Also, fintech is another
Hmm.
one in Florida and other states as well, like Utah.
Okay. And interestingly, do you think there's spaces that aren't covered yet, right? That there may be demand for either UK exporting products or UK importing products as well that may not be covered yet. So, for instance, I didn't see a lot of focus on things like raw material, things like lumber on a lot of these MOUs, as well as space for things like agricultural products as well. So, is there not an interest there, or is there more that we haven't found the right state yet that's a big focus for them?
Yeah, I think that there will be interest in those areas, although possibly things like agriculture are a little bit more difficult to sell in the UK, maybe in terms of protecting our own agriculture and what effects is it going to have. I know the UK Australia trade agreement we just entered into, there was a lot of discussion around that and the effect it might have on UK farmers and so on. But I think it's just a case of we haven't got there yet. We haven't got to the States maybe where that is. I mean, we're still in discussions with California, for example. So this is a big agricultural sector there, isn't there? And also the film industry there. The UK, particularly around London, there's a huge film industry as well. So a lot of blockbusters are made there. So I think we're still in discussion with Illinois as well, Colorado, and Texas. So there's a wide variety of potential industries there. I think that
Yeah,
could be
we got a pretty
discussed.
wide space there.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I think one more question I'd have would be around how companies could actually take advantage of some of these MOUs, right? So they're in place, the state governments recognize them. I know you mentioned trade missions, but let's say you're a pretty large exporter. What should you really be looking at if you're in one of these states? Is there something you can do to kind of get more involved? Is it contacting, whatever the state body would be that's facilitating these agreements, or looking for those potential trade missions? What should you be really on the lookout for if you're, say,
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think those will all help. I think these agreements should be making the ability to talk to the UK and the UK to talk to the States easier and remove those barriers. And a big part of the MOUs is actually promoting the agreements that are in place to businesses and matchmaking, if you like, introductions to investors, introductions to potential customers or potential partners, collaboration with academia on research and so on. So I think there are lots of ways to make contact, and pinpointing particular industries down to but more, if you're looking for more micro level, then in terms of finding distributors or that kind of thing, or finding particular businesses, then of course you can do it through the trade missions, but also through companies like ours that can help businesses to find partners in a particular country, and using those agreements as a way of making it an attractive proposition for both sides.
great. And it does seem like this is a good stopgap around before we have like a formal free trade agreement in place, which hopefully is coming. Do you have any thoughts on that, if in terms of what you think the odds are, if you think we're going to see anything, even in the next couple of years, right, that we can really kind of hold out for? Or is this really going to be the direction we think businesses should jump into, see how to do that trade now, as opposed to waiting out for a more structured free trade agreement to come into place?
Yeah, I think certainly the discussion here is that nothing's really going to happen in the next couple of years.
Hmm.
I mean, there's this Atlantic Declaration that Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak signed, which is a more general agreement. But again,
Hmm.
it's more of a collaboration in terms of making things easier, cooperating on economic challenges, supply chains, and so on. So that's a more general thing. But I think a full free trade agreement is going to take some time, particularly. Um, Ireland is Northern
Hmm.
Ireland is a bit of a stumbling block at the
Hmm.
moment politically. I think until that's um, resolved, which may take a little bit of time, I think it will be difficult for either party to sort of move ahead.
Yeah. I think obviously for the US, the big challenge is potentially missing out if, say, the UK enters into free trade agreements with different countries before the US. It
Yeah.
makes air products a lot more difficult to have them compete in the United Kingdom. So hopefully
And
they're.
we're definitely pushing forward on new free trade agreements. We just got this agreement with the CPTPP, which is a Pacific
Mhm.
bloc. So
Mm.
and so we're spreading out and definitely looking for these new agreements. I say it's something which the government is has sort of promised, if you like, through Brexit. So they have
Yeah.
to do it, and they're actively looking to find agreements or enter into agreements.
Okay. Well, naturally, we'll be keeping an eye and see if something does resurrect on the US side. But it seems like for the time being, this is a good opportunity for a lot of US based exporters, and as well as for companies that are facilitating import. Um, just to try and make sure it's understood how that trade's going to look like and make sure there are all state resources to, help them move along if, say, the federal level is going to be, it seems, dragging its feet a bit.
Yes, I think so. I think, you know, don't business doesn't wait, I don't think. I think we need to
Yeah,
find the opportunities.
great. I think finally, can you just kind of highlight yourself, your business, and potentially how people can kind of get back in touch with you if they're interested in UK US trade?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. So, yeah, my name's Mike Wilson. I'm the CEO of Go Exporting. And we're, as the name suggests, a specialist export consultancy helping businesses to expand internationally, to profitably expand internationally. And we do that through looking at export readiness, whether a business is ready to export or what it needs to do to be ready to export, customs and compliance issues, and what are the rules and regulations about getting a product or a service from one country to another, through to market research, devising strategy, and helping companies to find customers or find distributors, for example, in international markets. So we have a network of consultants in sort of 45 countries or so. So we're not just in the UK. We can help companies that want to come into Europe, but obviously we're based in the UK, so that's a major part of what we do. But most of our customers, in fact, are from outside the UK wanting to sell into Europe basically, or into the UK market. So yeah, we um, love working with American companies, and it's it's always interesting. There's that common language there and common understanding, so it's great.
Yeah, the language I think is always positive, and I think certainly it's a space that's necessary. I know in the United States there is a pretty big lack in, I think, knowledge around exporting. I think oftentimes it's the case that the US market is just so large, you can grow to such a size without really ever needing to look outside your own borders. And when I think
Yeah,
that time comes, um, you may be a little bit late to actually step into a market where in the past you were, ahead of. But
yeah. So
naturally,
yeah,
mhm.
sorry, you can see a lot of information on our website, which is goexporting.com, and we have an expert exporter resource hub for new exporters as well. It gives them information about how to go about different parts, different aspects of exporting. So it's quite a useful free resource that's on there available for people.
Great. So definitely go check that out. Thanks for listening in today. Again, this is the American World Trade Chamber of Commerce. Keep coming up and follow along as we post more updates related to trade for US based entities. Thank you, Mike, for joining today, and thank you, everyone, for listening.